Hello and welcome to another episode of Green Sofa Reviews. And today I'm going to be doing a requested video where I show you how to repaste a CPU and GPU on a laptop. Now on this particular laptop I've already repasted it with Thermal Grizzly Conductonaut, the liquid metal thermal paste, and I have also used the Cryonaut on here as well. The Conductonaut I did on the CPU and the GPU, and the Cryonaut on everything else. And I also used conformal coating. Now with that, it's like using you paint it on. It comes in a little jar, at least the stuff that I get comes in a little jar with a paintbrush, and you paint it on the motherboard, and it keeps the motherboard from getting electrical shocks. Like if the Conductonaut leaks out and you don't have that protective coating, it's going to fry your motherboard, period. So you definitely want to have something on there. Now I'm out of the conformal coating, so I'm trying liquid tape. I've never used this before, but I've checked on a bunch of different forums and people have used it and it seems to work fine, so we're going to try it here. You're going to go on a little journey with me. We're going to try an experiment, and if it doesn't work, well then I just saved your computer. Definitely I think conformal coating is the preferred way to go, but we're going to give this a shot and see what happens. So let's get started. Alright, here are the thermals on my Asus ROG GU501. This is with it repasted with liquid metal on the CPU and GPU, and then high quality thermal paste on everything else. I'm going to repaste it and show you guys how to repaste it. And I usually use a conformal coating. I don't have any of that. Couldn't find any in town, so I'm going to use liquid electrical tape, and we'll see what that does, because I've read it may raise the temps a little bit. So these are the temps beforehand. We'll see what happens after I do it. Alright, so to get started, going to open up my iFixit toolkit, and we're going to use the T4 bit. And make sure you have some kind of part trace somewhere to put your screws so they don't get lost, and I like to put them in the order from which I took them out, because at least on this laptop some of these are a little bit different in size. Alright, so now that this is out, I'm going to take my pry tool, or if you don't have one of these, you can use a guitar pick, which iFixit gives you these, but you're just going to pick a corner and pry this sucker up. Okay, so now you can see, got the cover off, and the first thing you want to do, oh, almost forgot, make sure that you have on a device that will dissipate static electricity. I'm working on an anti-static mat as well as wearing the wrist strap. Make sure you have something. You definitely don't want to damage your laptop by not having this on here. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the battery. You don't want to take any chances, so we'll do that first. And it's going to be, I don't know if you can see that, this guy right here. If you look at the battery right on the side, you'll see the wire coming out. Alright, and now the battery is disconnected, so we can get started. So what we're going to need now is a Phillips head, and you're going to need two different sizes. You have the ones that hold the fans to the motherboard, and then you have the ones that hold the actual heat pipes to the CPU and GPU. And with this, I like to do it in a crisscross pattern just because it helps distribute the load more evenly when tightening and untightening. So you're putting less stress on the mounts and the motherboard, so there's less chance of you breaking anything. Alright, so you'll see the heat pipes are now loose, so we're going to switch over to our smaller bit, and we are going to undo the fans. One thing I will say about this laptop is it's extremely easy to work on. Everything is laid out logically. It's all right there. And nicely, the connectors seem pretty sturdy. They don't seem like they're just going to snap. Alright, now that it's loose, we are going to lift it up. And you'll notice when you go to lift it up, the heat pipe, these cables are going to get caught on it. So I like to disconnect the Wi-Fi cables, and from my position, from the way you're looking at it, white is going to be closest to you and black farther away. Now from my position, where the battery is closest to me, the black is going to be close to me and the white is going to be away from me. But I'm going to lift that out, take these two cables off, and now we're going to disconnect the fans. And again, because while they're not real delicate, you don't want to take any chances. I'm going to take my little tool and just use this to wiggle that connector out. Alright, now that the fan cables are disconnected, Wi-Fi card cables are disconnected, I'm going to lift up this end right here, the end that's closer to the battery than the hard drive, And make sure you also grab the fans. And on this side, the screen cable will catch a little bit, so make sure you watch that. And that's it. So you can see these are the heat sinks. They're nice copper heat sinks. And you can see on this one, if you've done this before, you'll notice a mistake that I made. You'll see I have plenty of liquid metal on the CPU and GPU itself, but I did not put any on the copper. You always want to make sure that you do both the CPU and GPU and the copper plates as well. Now you'll notice you've got thermal compound on circuitry all over the motherboard right here. And I like that Asus did that. It keeps the temps much lower on here than it otherwise would be. And you can see right here on this one where I actually used some extra thermal paste to go around the die just to help insulate on top of the conformal coating. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take these two bottles here. They're Arctic Clean, and I use this to clean the motherboard of all the thermal compound. So this one will be first. This is the thermal material remover. We'll do that first. It's labeled, it's easy. You got one, and then you got two. This will, after you remove the stuff, this preps the surface. After you remove the stuff using the thermal material remover, you will then prep the surface with thermal surface purifier. And that just makes sure that the board is completely free of contaminants. And then after we do that, we are going to try out our liquid electrical tape. So for this step, I personally just squirt this stuff on everything that's got thermal compound. And then I let it soak for a little bit. This just makes it a whole lot easier to remove everything. So we're going to let that sit. And then we'll take a paper towel and just wipe everything down. And I don't know if you can see, but another good reason to use that surface purifier is, in using this, I am leaving behind little bits of paper towel, so that surface purifier will get all that up. Even letting that thermal material remover soak for as little as it did, this stuff is coming off very, very easily. And I do recommend, once you're done with the big stuff, get a Q-tip and go back over everything with a Q-tip, where you can really get into everything and get out the old thermal compound. And keep in mind that since we're going to be using liquid metal, this is something you'll have to do on a yearly basis, just to ensure the longevity of your equipment. Thermal compound lasts a couple of years, but liquid metal, it's only good for about a year. A little bit longer, but it's just a good idea to make this a yearly ritual with any of your machines that you liquid metal. You should just go ahead and plan on repasting your equipment on a yearly basis. Just make it kind of like a yearly spring clean for your desktop or laptop. And make sure as you're going, you're being very gentle, because there are all kinds of little transistors all over the board that if you're just going at it, you can snap them off the motherboard and your computer's going to start acting weird. So don't go too crazy, because while computers are fairly tough, you can still damage it, so just don't go nuts. Alright, we got all the big stuff, so now I'm going to put a little bit more of that thermal compound remover on here, and then just go over everything with a Q-tip to kind of get in between the capacitors and resistors and diodes, and just make sure everything gets cleaned up. Now, because I've already done a deep clean when I first repasted this, I'm not going to go overboard on this. I do want a good clean mounting surface. This is all already been done the first time I did this, especially if you've done liquid metal, because that liquid metal may start getting out. I'm finding it in other places. Okay, now that we have cleaned the surface, we're going to purify the surface and just make sure that anything that could stop the thermal compound from adhering is cleaned up. And I don't know if I pointed this out before, but this is the GPU right here, the NVIDIA GTX 1060, and this is the Intel 8th gen processor, an 8750H. We are now going to let that dry, and while it's drying, we're going to do the liquid electrical tape. And be careful, you're going to have to wipe back over this, because a lot of this stuff is going to need to get thermal compound on it anyway. So just kind of watch that, and I just kind of look over where everything is going to make sure everything that's going to touch is free from the liquid tape. Because anything that's going to be connected to the heat pipe, we definitely don't want it coated in the liquid electrical tape, because it's not going to dissipate heat as well as thermal compound will. And this stuff does dry fairly quickly, so make sure if you get anywhere you don't want it, you get it up as quickly as you can. And you do want to layer it on thick, because that'll make it easier to pull out when you want to get it off. One thing I will say about this liquid electrical tape, the brush on this sucks. I'm going to use a Q-tip. Alright, now you want to let that dry. We're going to let it dry for about 20 minutes, and then I'll show you how to apply the thermal compound. The thermal compound is pretty straightforward. It's easy. The liquid metal can be a little tricky, so I'll show you that and we'll go from there. Okay, so the liquid electrical tape has dried for the most part. I'm sure for it to fully cure it would take 24 hours or so, but it's pretty much dry. And the cool thing is I had a little that going on some stuff and after it dries you can actually just kind of peel it right off. It comes off really easy if you put it on thick. So what we're going to do now is put on the Thermal Grizzly Conducto Knot, which is this stuff right here. In my opinion, from all the reviews that I've read and watched, this is the best liquid metal thermal compound that you can get. And I really like it. It's good stuff. And when I first got the laptop, the temps were under full load. They would get up into the in the 90s. Now under full load they stay high 60s, low 70s. Under idle, it would idle in the mid 40s, mid to high 40s. Usually the high 40s is where it would idle after you've been on for a while. Now it idles high 30s, low 40s. It usually sits in the low 40s. So idle temps drop maybe at most 10 degrees, but under full load the temps dropped between about 17 to 22 degrees Celsius. Alright, so with this stuff you just want the tiniest amount of liquid metal, and it's going to look like a shiny metal ball when you put it out. And if you get too much, just very quickly pull the plunger back in and you can suck it right back up. And I'm going to do one at a time. So we'll start with that. And with that little ball of liquid metal on there, you take the included Q-tip, which is black. It's really cool looking. And I just immediately mash the ball. Just kind of smash it down. And then just spread it across the die, just the silver part. And then to make sure that you don't have too much on there, kind of after you get it spread out, just kind of look at it from an angle and you'll be able to tell if it's pooling. And if it's pooling, just stick the nozzle back on there and suck it up a little bit. Now we're going to do the GPU. And like I said, if you kind of smash it down first and then start spreading it out, it's a lot easier to control. That's how you want your chips to look. Looks like there's almost a pool of water on them. And that's how you know that your chip is ready to go. Now we're going to do the thermal compound. And for that, we are going to use Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut. Now this stuff is not electrically conductive. So if you get a little bit on the motherboard, don't freak out, it's okay. You're not going to fry anything. Do the plunger, push the plunger in, and spread out the paste. And don't get the smallest one. I don't remember what size the smallest one is. And doesn't tell me what size on here. But anyway, when you're looking at this, don't get the smallest size. The smallest size is just, it's not enough. Well, maybe if you're less heavy-handed than me, it'll be enough. But I would just say do not get the smallest size. Coat all the surfaces. Alright, and then while I'm doing this, I like to line up the heat pipes back just to see where they're going to go, so I know where to put the thermal compound. Like I said, the thermal compound is not thermally conductive, so I do tend to be a little heavy-handed. Whether that's bad or good, I can't really tell you. And I'm going to put some of this on the diodes that are on that GPU chipset. Just, it'll be a way to protect in case any of the liquid metal comes out, and it'll help maybe in my head, but I think it helps with temps on here as well. Alright, after the board is done, you then want to make sure that you put thermal compound on the copper itself. And again, as you're going about doing this, make sure you just kind of line everything up to make sure you're spreading this on all the surfaces that it's going to go. Alright, then after you got that done, take the tip off and put the cap back on so you can save the rest for another build. And now we're going to do a little bit of liquid metal on the copper as well. And on the copper, they have helpful arrows to help you kind of stay within the boundaries of the chips themselves. Now you will notice on copper that liquid metal starts to not eat at it, but it causes a chemical reaction with copper. And it's going to change the way it looks when you clean it. But don't worry about that. That's normal. It's fine. It's just something to be aware of. And with that, we are ready to put it back together. So you're going to want to, with this, these fans can be a bit of a pain. So you want to get the side that actually has the cable for the monitor itself. Go ahead and get that fitted in that slot for the heat exchanger for the radiator. And make sure you don't set the fan on the connector either, but then everything will slide right in. And then once you're sure you've got it lined up, go ahead and drop it into place. I'm going to go ahead and do the CPU and GPU coolers first. And don't tighten them all the way down. At first, go ahead and get them in there, and then come back and tighten them. We just kind of want it to hold everything in place at first. Alright, now we're going to do the fans. The fans you can go ahead and get tight. And again, with everything, make sure you're doing the crisscross or star pattern. And one thing I noticed about this laptop, it has a different fan design than what I'm used to. If you notice, when you take this apart, the fan blades themselves are completely exposed. On my Alienware, that's what I learned to work on laptops on, was that Alienware. I'm usually a desktop guy. The Alienware fans, they're all in one piece. The fan blades aren't exposed. This, the metal right here, the fan blades fit into that, and that creates the whole housing for the fan blades. It's a interesting and unique design. I'll have to look up and see what the benefits are. If anybody actually knows, they can leave me a comment below. But I find it fascinating the way they designed this thing. Alright, now the fans are back in. We are going to tighten down the CPU and GPU completely. And remember, do the star pattern. And you definitely don't want to over tighten this. Honestly, I personally think you'd be better off being just a little bit loose than too tight. Alright, with everything tightened down, we are going to hook the fans back up first. So that one's in. That one's in. Now we're going to do the Wi-Fi card. Alright, Wi-Fi card is in. So before I connect the battery, we're just going to look over everything. Everything's tight. Everything is put back into place. So now we're going to reconnect. Alright, now we're going to put the cover on, and then we'll see if we fried a computer. Alright, moment of truth. So far so good. Alright, let's open this up and see what kind of temps we're getting. So far so good. The temps seem pretty low. And I've noticed with this laptop the temps do jump around for whatever reason on the CPU. GPU stays pretty steady, but the CPU will jump all over the place. I guess as it goes on and off load, since the CPU obviously does more, it's going to change more often. But it's staying fairly low. Okay, so you saw today how to repaste a laptop. We used the Thermal Grizzly, Conductonaut, and Cryonaut. The Conductonaut is the liquid metal, and the Cryonaut is the regular just thermal paste. And then we used this liquid electrical tape to coat all around the CPU and GPU. Now, since right before this closing, I showed you the temps, and the computer was doing well, and then it shot up in temperature and it shut down. Found out don't use this stuff. Unless you're going to do very light stuff, don't use this. This stuff did not work out. Peeled it off, computer's fine, everything's back normal. I've still got the liquid metal on there. I've still got the regular thermal paste. I just pulled this off and it's fine now. I have some conformal coating coming in, so I'll put that on it when it comes in just to keep it protected. In the meantime, yeah, I've still got the liquid metal on there. You know, what can I say? Living on the edge. For all you Archer fans, Danger Zone! But seriously, this stuff is great. I love liquid metal on here. It's made a huge difference. It's super easy to do, as you saw. It doesn't take but maybe 15-20 minutes. And make sure that you use conformal coating. This liquid electrical tape does not work well. It is definitely worth it. In just normal use, I don't have to kick the fans don't kick on very much. You can manually on this computer go in and turn the fans on, and I don't have to do that for normal use. Now when I start playing games, I do kick the fans on. But for normal stuff, don't even bother with it, and the temps stay very low. So with all that being said, I did also want to mention. I also wanted to mention these things. They are the IC Graphite thermal pads. They are marketed as alternatives to thermal grease, the Cryonaut, and they're supposed to be reusable. They're supposed to last for years and still get the same performance. These things are garbage. They cost more than the Thermal Grizzly, Conductonaut, and Cryonaut, and they suck. I mean, my temps were worse. My temps were worse with these than stock. Do not do the thermal pads. At least not the IC graphite ones. Maybe there's some that are better. These suck. They're garbage. My temps were worse. I had an issue the first time I put it in. These things are so thin it actually came out. So just don't do it. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, like it. Dislike it, dislike it. Leave me a comment. Please share the video and subscribe for more cool videos. And again, thanks for watching.